So good evening. Let us discuss today about Myanmar elections. Now, the total strength of the parliament, including both the houses together, it is 664. Now, after 664, 25% of these are reserved for army, that is, military positions. Now, in the remaining things, the president is elected through a complex process. The upper house, lower house, and armies, that is 25% reserved people, they three will nominate three members. Who among them gets the majority out of this 664, he will become the president of the Myanmar, and the remaining two will become the vice presidents. This is what is the procedure prescribed in the election of the president of Myanmar. And the second thing is, such an elected president has no right to involve with the amendment of the constitution, or other way around. No constitutional amendment can be made without approval from the reserved 25% of the people for the military. And the third thing is the president really powerful? Understand carefully. The president of Myanmar, he cannot appoint any important positions that are related to the security of the country. For example, home, the border management, defense, all these things the president has no say in the appointments. Now in this context, can Suki become the president of the Myanmar? The chances are totally absent because the constitution of Myanmar enacted in 2008 will not allow a citizen with offsprings of foreign origin to become the president of the country. Aung San Suu Kyi has two children who has the British passports. Because of this, she cannot become the president. Now, in this context, who are the major contestants in the elections? One is NLD, National League for Democracy of Aung San Suu Kyi. Next is Union Solidarity and Developmental Party, USDP. So it's a military-backed party headed by Thein Sein. So these are the two parties that are contesting. Already the results are coming out. More than 70% of the seats have to come to the Aung San Suu Kyi, are about to come to the Aung San Suu Kyi. Now in this context, carefully understand, the military still holds the control over the democracy. The military calls it as disciplined democracy. This is what is the military's term for that. So in this disciplined democracy, to what extent Aung San Suu Kyi can adjust is a big question. It means that it is going to open confrontation between the army and democracy activism and no sooner in Myanmar. So this is the outcome. And the next thing is, recently we all know India and African Union Summit was held. So with regard to this summit, what are the outcomes where India can deepen its cooperation with the African Union? Now from the Nehruvian era, we have a common front, common principles on which we stood together. These principles are to stand to justice, to fight against exploitation, all forms, either it is colonialism or racial exploitation, anything. So this has made India's stand very clear with regard to any ethnic violence in Africa, either it is Zimbabwe or South Africa, any country for that matter. Now in this context, the present summit has attended by 41 of the 54 leaders of the African Union countries, which in itself is a record. There are certain native territorial dispute issues which have come open with regard to the summit, but they are not very significant. On the other hand, remember the Nelson Mandela's word. What he has said is, the ties between Indian subcontinent and African Union are like a golden thread that have united these two on a common struggle against injustice and oppression. Now, going beyond the principle, let us see injustice. Now, today, India is the major supplier of the HIV and AIDS related drugs, the low-cost generic drugs to the this Africa. And now the patents regime, intellectual property rights, these are coming in between India and Africa to fight against this deadly disease. So in this context, the countries need to cooperate better, and India has to protect its space to help the Africa. And second thing is, India and Africa, they have common issues that is related to poverty. And India is able to progress better than Africa. The reason being the stable government and stable political environment. And the second thing is, we have many low-cost ground-level innovations that have made our poverty, reduction in poverty, much stronger. So in this context, Africa can learn from this developmental success of India. And finally, Africa and India, they need to work on improving the bilateral trade. India already has promised $10 billion as a loan to the Africa, but however, India has much to gain from this already. United States of America and China are ahead of India in this. If you take China, by 2020, it was planning to invest more than $100 billion in Africa. And also, the trade is reaching more than 700 billion, planning to reach more than $700 billion itself is too huge. So, in this context, India has to take a forward step with regard to the African Union policy is concerned. But there is one visible setback over here. That is, African Union, they did not outrightly support India's stand in the United Nations Security Council for permanent membership. So they said, the summit said, the countries will take a note of India's claim for the permanent membership, but outright, agreement or outright approval of India's stand was not visible. This is one thing which I see it as a drawback. Other than that, this summit is very much helpful for deepening our relationships between this thing. So India and Africa. The next issue is about Myanmar. So one way the democracy is deepening in Myanmar, there is no doubt about it. But there are many problems that are still the Myanmar is facing. Let us see them. The first one is ethnic conflicts are increasing in Myanmar. So there are many ethnic groups in which the existing military regime has made certain progress with regard to ceasefire. But however, even today, many of the organizations, for example, Kachin Independence Organization, next is Arakan Army, all these, they are still, still have their own doubts in spite of signing the this particular ceasefire agreement. And next there are certain other organizations, that is Karen National Union, these are still not interested in signing a ceasefire agreement. We all know that NSC and Koplong faction, it also has signed a ceasefire agreement with the Myanmar. And because of this, Myanmar is not willing to control this faction which is causing the violence in India. We know the Manipur ambush. And the second thing is poverty. Now, only 3% of the citizens in Myanmar, they get a direct or indirect benefit from the governmental programs. And the growing deforestation, the Myanmar is the third country which has got the highest deforestation. The movement of private capital and also growing manufacturing sector is making the forest a past thing. We all know that what is the demand that is there in the global markets for the Burma take, because the equatorial forest will give us the durable take. And the next is the Rohingyas issue. You know, in these elections, the Rohingyas were not given the right to vote. And recently the Rohingya refugee issue has kept the Myanmar very low on the human rights protection. And finally, any democracy, if it has to be sustainable and stable, it has to give due space for its minorities. In this context, the growing violence against the Rohingyas and assertiveness of the Buddhists, this is one thing which is causing a damage to the fabric of the Myanmar society. These need to be addressed by the new coming democratic government. But however, Aung San Suu Kyi did not give an open support towards the Rohingyas. That is something seen as a letdown by the human rights activists. And Jammu and Kashmir, I mean, here understand the sequence of events. Vajpayee's bus yatra to Lahore, and then Agra summit, and then all the issues, how they have cropped up in sequence, and finally what has led to this particular Kargil war. So you need to have the sequence of these events. So it was said again and again that during the Agra summit, both the countries were about to reach to an agreement, but they failed in the last moment. The Agra summit failed in the last moment. So that's based on that. The Farooq talks about the history, but I don't find valid points. Now, this is one positive development. The Heart of Asia conference is happening in Pakistan with regard to the future of Afghanistan, where the country has sent invitation to India. Now, this article, the simple thing is this: the iconography, how it is changing in India. Now, if you carefully observe, the rise and fall of a political phases are clearly establishing themselves with the changing iconography in India. For that being, let us understand this way. So the Jawaharlal Nehru phase, initially there was a tough fight, or else I will not say it as a tough fight. There was a balance in the leadership in Congress party between Nehru and Patel. Now later, after the death of the Patel, Nehru is the only undisputed leader in the Congress. From then onwards, iconography has shifted towards the Nehru. And during the Janata era, and after language fight in India, that one official language fight in India, we can see it is shifting towards the regional leaders and also towards the Jai Prakash Narayan and other leaders. And later, the Congress again reinstated its position with Indira Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi, etc. Now today, NDA is more talking about iconography of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, Subhash Chandra Bose. The next is Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. The author, what he tries to say is this: previously, everyone wanted to have the space for their leaders in the Indian iconography. But today, the NDA government is trying to create iconography to undermine the legacy of the Nehru. So it wants to raise the image of the other leaders so that the Nehru appears small. This is not the right approach according to the author. Now in this context, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar has defined the politics of bhakti, or else what makes India a pliable democracy, that is what is called bhakti, or excessive loyalties to a particular person. So try to see this particular statement of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, which I found very much valid and interesting. Other than that, this is not of much use to me. You can see, yesterday I was going through the videos of French Revolution. Now, as and when the revolution is progressing, then the iconography, even the calendar of Christian era was changed to reflect the revolution. So iconographies are meant to change as the regimes and politics of a country are changing. So, but however, this politics of bhakti, in this case, I want to bring it to your notice that Rudolph and Rudolph, they talked about India's politics as the politics of darshan. So the opinion of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and Rudolph's opinion of politics of cherishma and darshan, they come to close together. Try to connect these two things with regard to your public administration. And quoting the people's views, one positive development after court nullifying the NJAC and 99th Constitutional Amendment Act is towards reforming the existing collegium system. So in this context, the court has invited the opinions from all the sections of the society. It did not limit it to as an exercise confined to the stakeholders. So that itself is a positive development that institutions have to reflect the expectations of the people. This particular action or particular initiative by the judiciary shows that particular thing. So these are the important articles of today. And thank you very much. And I'm really sorry to say that our Sanjeev Verma sir has passed away. We miss him in teacher's room. And on the other hand, I have posted some opinions in my Ram Babu sir students page. These are purely personal, and I don't want to take it close to the heart. And one thing is, for this exam, purely from this examination point of view, a person need to express the secular views. I have seen many people saying that we Hindus, or something kind of a divisive orientation to their discussions, which may not be appropriate for this examination. I just want to give an advice on that particular front. You are secular and you need to be secular, and you need to present your answers protecting the secularism or securing the secularism as a viewpoint. Please understand this. And in the interview, especially examiner will be very tactful to express or to extract your real personality. So try to work on it from now. I mean, that's what is a sincere suggestion. And please, it's up to you to take it or not. But what I suggest to you is this. Please be careful, and please be balanced in expressing your opinions. And again, those opinions are purely my personal. Thank you very much.